have Snyder, and we have Dubravik.
Here.
So we do have a quorum, so we're good to go. The next thing I'm going to do is you all should have the agenda. Other than approving of meetings, we have one item of new business, which is the work application for the museum. But I would like a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, perfect. Good. We got Mark and Mark approving it. Rather than do a full recall, we've got the motion. Everybody, I'll go through it real quick. We know that Gwen, Mark,
Aye.
and you're fine with it also, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, real good. I'm gonna run with it that way because we heard from everyone. Have you folks had a chance to look at those October 12th, 2020 meetings? And if you're comfortable with it, could we have a motion to approve them?
I make a motion to approve the October 12th meeting notes.
I
I'll
second.
second that, Mark Bluen.
Okay, Mark, good. So we've got Engels, motion, Mark support, Dubravik. Approve the meeting minutes, yes or no?
Yes.
And Snyder.
Yes.
Okay. We are to the nuts and bolts of this meeting. The Wexford County Historical Museum, as we all know, they are restoring windows. Gwen's going to explain a little more about that, but none of that needs approval, but specifically, they want to do some storm windows, obviously, to help with heat insulation and so forth. So, Gwen, will you please kind of explain what's going on? In your packets, everybody should have had had the information that Gwen's provided on the type of storm windows. So, Gwen, I'm just going to mute myself and turn it over to you for a minute.
Sure, that's fine. What these windows are, it's a brand called Monray, Monray. It is, there are a couple of brands that are used. This one is top of the line as far as generally used for restoration purposes. Now, to me, it's not really restoration when you're putting, it's to simulate the look of a wooden window, but it is a metal window. So, in the packet, I had included not really pictures of the museum because we all know what the museum looks like, but I put some pictures of samples of those windows. So it's kind of like it's the best of what we've got for doable, viable, that obviously save maintenance in the long run because they're metal. And so at least on the museum proper, the double hungs in the back and like the basement windows, a lot of those are wooden windows. And these would be metal storms going over them, but they're duplicating as close as possible the look of old wooden storm windows. Now, the only thing is that, you look at them, to me, you can see they're metal. But I did go to Grand Rapids, and these are what are approved in the Historic District in Heritage Hill in Grand Rapids. And I went down to, and I looked at 4 sites that had these windows in them, and they looked reasonably appealing. It's the flush, so they aren't sticking out in relief. They don't look cheap or anything. They're the flush pattern to simulate where an old wooden window would be kind of put into the hole of, and then it's flush with the trim is the style of these, that's what it's made to duplicate that style. And the only thing is, of course, you can tell if you look closely that it is metal, not wood. However, the front of the building where you have, I think some of those mutton bars might actually even be metal on the windows. So the interior part is wood, but then the exterior, I thought some time back that someone up there had said those were metal. So either way, you're far away from it. So whether the originals are metal or are wood, this over it, because it's that flush pattern, and all of any divisions in there, they're not true divided light mutton bars in the windows in the storms, but what they're doing, like for instance, the big arched windows, they will be dividing the windows at where there's a mutton bar juncture already. That's where, because the windows are so big and for weight purposes, to get better UV protection and insulation and wear and tear, all of that, it's a heavier window than the other kind of second place brand. But because of that, they won't do one big window. They said that's just too much weight for an individual window. But what it is I think it ends up being about three to four windows for the big arched windows of the museum. Down the central portion, I think that's where you'd have three. And then along the side, you'd have smaller for those little baby casements. And they would have screens in the casements because the museum does open those casements for ventilation in the summer when it's really muggy in there. So that's the deal with that. And the basement windows, those are designed, and these screens can be put in or either put in or taken out. And all of the exterior, only the casements, the little ones would have an interior removal of screens or opening access to be able to remove the panel itself. All the rest are removed from the exterior as far as the main body of the building. And then in the basement level, those are more like double hungs where you have a screen on the bottom because we use ventilation there. So that's the deal. The only thing that would not look like an original of the building, if you will, would be the fact that they are metal clad. And, those in the day probably were wood if they even had storms up there. And then the screens, they may or may not have had screens, right? So, and those screens, of course, everything is removable. So it's not technically marring the original building itself. So that's what I can say about that. Are you all able to see pictures of the samples of the windows that they've put into other properties?
Yes, we did see the other examples.
Yes, I looked at the pictures in the packets. I'm not going to bring them up here. It's technologically for me. I would have to go through multiple steps to bring them up, and I don't want to lose you.
Yeah, that's no problem. Does anyone have any question of me on those windows?
Gwen, I guess the only one I have is we'd talked previously, so I understand. So they are a removable window or storm, so they can be taken out and cleaned and that sort of thing, if need be.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
I didn't have any questions at this time, Gwen. I just want to say that they looked, what you had sent, the pictures and everything looked really, really good.
Okay, that's good.
And thanks, Gwen, for all your work going down to Grand Rapids and checking this stuff.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Gwen, can you hear me?
I'm sorry. You're a little bit echoey, but I got that you were talking to me.
I just kind of jumped on. It might have been me. I was just going to ask if anyone else had any questions or comments for Gwen, Mark or Ann.
No.
Mark, you're
Nope.
talking, but you're muted. So unmute. You're there.
Okay. I've been disconnected from this meeting 3 times. So, okay. Anyway, Gwen, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Okay. So these are, I have to tell you, my very first job after college, I worked for a company that made extruded, like commercial windows, aluminum. So I would imagine they're going to be similar to that, but they're storm windows. And we did a lot of historical buildings. I have to say, in that bronze colored aluminum, which you see in some of these samples, they actually looked really nice, I have to say. What color were these going to be?
Well, that's the thing that bothers,
that?
I'm just, I'm a purist, you know what I mean? So when I went to Grand Rapids and I looked at the samples, they gave me addresses of homes and businesses that had these windows. They all look great. They look fine, you know. And of course, you know, if you're a little bit farther, the bigger the building, the better they look because you're further away. So you aren't necessarily thinking, you know, because metal, because the sheen can be mistaken a little bit sometimes for vinyl, you know. So sometimes they may not look as good one way or another when the closer you are. But on these big buildings, they're far enough away, you don't see them, and they do look nice. And even, you know, I walked up close to some of these that were on ground level, and they still looked fine. The one thing I can say is, you know, at the museum, we'll use white because that's our trim color. And that's the only thing. There were no samples of white that I saw personally myself. All these were darker colors. And in the darker colors, they looked really good. Like you said, the bronze color I thought was very nice. And then there was like a reddish burgundy color in another building. Very nice. But I didn't see it really in a building up in application on the white. And then when I saw a white sample that they brought to the museum, you know, when they were going through and evaluating and all that, that's the only thing is to me, I thought, well, that looks like a vinyl window to me, you know, and it still was tasteful. It was the flat pattern and all of that. But, you know, it didn't look like an old wooden window per se. You know, but seeing the others up in application, they look quite nice. So I imagine the white will probably be nice as well. But I would tend to think that white is what we go with because the building's been, you know, the yellow brick and the white trim. So I hope it looks as good as the others do when it's up in application, but just up close, me looking at it, you know, and they're all, oh, you'll never tell the difference. I'm like, well, yeah, I can tell the difference, but that doesn't mean it necessarily looks terrible, but doesn't look like a wooden window, though.
And I was just sure.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you, Mark.
I can understand why you choose white, like over the bronze. I mean, even though you can't hear me? Let me see.
Mark, you are
Sort
fading
of.
in and out.
I'm saying that's fine. Thank you, Gwen.
Okay, you're welcome. The dark colors did look classier, I thought, just as a personal preference, but that's not what we would go with just because of what's there. We'd be going with the white. So I hope they look classy too. You know?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
If we don't have any other questions or anything, we can always entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to vote on it.
We have a motion to approve by Mark. Can we have a second?
A second.
Okay, we have a second by Ann. Okay. I'm going to go through everyone this time. Engels? Yes or
Yes.
no? Blyven?
Yes.
Dubravik?
Oh, I probably shouldn't vote because I'm involved in this.
Well,
I'll recuse myself.
explain. I'm going to have you vote. Well, Mark?
Yes.
Okay.
Am I the
Yes,
quorum,
yes,
though?
Mark. Yeah, okay. Well, Ann decided to, or not Ann, but Gwen recused herself. That's always an interesting thing. Gwen clearly presented this to us, but because she does not have a personal financial interest in the museum, that's where it gets kind of interesting as to whether she could vote or not. But anyway, but we're good there. So we're all set there. The only other question I have, council has asked us to do this. Is there anyone here that is joining this meeting for a location outside of the city of Cadillac?
Nope.
Okay, I will note that. Do we have any comments by commission members? Anything additional? Okay. I just want to let you know, I did hear from the gentleman that I sent the letter to about the garage doors on North Park. And I let him know he needed to submit more information to us other than he plans to paint the doors. So he needs to get more information, but at least he did contact me after receiving the letter. So I just wanted to let you know that. If we don't have anything else, somebody wave your hand, do something, and we can adjourn. We don't need a vote for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
I always apologize
Thank
for
you,
my,
guys.
limitations with technology.